to show you something.
Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines is a lot of things. For starters, it's a whole lot of words in a row. It's a glorious time capsule of 2000s edginess, but most importantly, it's a beloved RPG with great atmosphere and replayability. But as much as it's become a darling of internet modders in the YouTube video essay space, Bloodlines has still never quite gotten enough credit for what I think is its most underrated aspect, how excellent a horror experience that it is. Now sure, everyone talks about how scary the Ocean House Hotel is, but there is so much more lurking just beneath the surface that I want to sink our teeth into today and show you what you've been missing, or we're just too afraid to remember. So today I bring to you the underrated horror of Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. There's a lot to like about the depth of Troika Games' adaptation of White Wolf's tabletop RPG, but I have to praise most especially how they captured the core fantasy of what being a vampire would feel like in the modern world. Now sure, you can get super overpowered and ghost whole levels while invisible, or unleash massive damage with blood powers if you want, but the inherent need to feed means that you'll be chowing down on some hapless innocents soon enough. Vampirism isn't just some cool thing to be here, it's a relentless hunger that'll make you have to stop and obey your urges in gross ways if you want to have enough blood to succeed in your quests. No matter how different, every vampire race needs to feed, and sometimes that just means cornering that one homeless guy and giving him a hickey for the ages, or if you're in really tough straits, picking up rats off the ground and eating them raw. There's even the Nosferatu race that's especially hard but interesting to play because they feed into this monstrous routine. No pun intended. The Nosferatu are so physically deformed that they can't even be seen by any bystanders on the street, although below the vampire's cover. So unlike every other race that can spend the good 30% of the game walking around the streets talking to people, the Nosferatu have to travel down into the sewers to get around most places. I just love how immersively enforced the monstrous nature of your condition is. The other most interesting play experience belongs to the Mad Malkavians, who are the only race with their own specially written dialogue. They speak in odd turns of phrase, turned upside down, and they have special dialogue options and observations because they can see visions of the future and are often highly schizophrenic. Writer Brian Mitsoda even did their dialogue last in the game's tumultuous development cycle, and the lack of sleep and stress directly informed how the Malkavians think and speak. Now before we go any further, I know spoilers suck, so I'm giving you a courtesy spoiler warning right now because everything beyond this point is positively dripping with them, so continue at your own risk. Alright, with that out of the way, let's talk existential horror. Regardless of what class you choose, some of the most messed up, horrific aspects of vampire life, besides feeding on the innocent, are how you choose to wield your ability to sire other vampires. I asked Two-Headed Hero what the best horror moment was in Bloodlines, and Two-Headed Hero had this great example of how the life of a vampire, what accounts for it, can kind of suck.
Hey Midnight Medium, thanks so much for the gracious invitation.
My name is Boss Sauce.
And I'm Roland Coons, and together, we are the Two-Headed Hero.
Perhaps the most tragic tale in Bloodlines is the fate of Heather Poe. You can find Heather in the game early on, bleeding to death in a Santa Monica hospital bed. The doctor on duty is swamped with patients, and while he attends to another life-and-death surgery, Heather lies dying just a few rooms away. She begs for help as you approach. And if you've learned about the restorative powers of vampire blood, you can do the girl a solid and open a vein in order to save her life. Heather recovers remarkably quickly once the vamp blood goes down the hatch. Once you try to explain to her what you've done though, she'll yell for security and get you chased out of the building. Gratitude is truly dead. So you go about your dark business, snacking on necks, blowing away the sabbat, and forgetting about the whole thing. Until one evening, just as you step out of your cab, you find Heather waiting for you downtown. Her attitude this time is decidedly different. Instead of the fear and confusion she felt lying there on the hospital bed, she admits she's spent the whole time stalking you, asking around the neighborhood if anybody's seen you, going to the same bodega you like to hang out at, even showing up on your doorstep, all in an effort to be within a werewolf's hair of your presence. See, vampire blood doesn't just heal the living, it also enslaves them. Heather describes this feeling as an overwhelming romantic love, but we all know what's really going on here. She got ghouled. So by making the choice to save her life, you've also taken away her free will and turned her into a blood junkie that's willing to do anything for just one more sip of that precious red from your wrist. It might seem pretty fun at first to have an adoring ghoul friend who dresses up for you and showers you with gifts and affection, as well as a free midnight snack whenever you please. But it starts to become a little creepier when Heather ditches her undergrad degree, gives you her college tuition money, and shuns her family in order to spend more time catering to your whims. It becomes an even bigger problem once she starts to bring dudes home and locks them in your bathroom for later.
What the hell is this?
Leftovers. Heather's tale comes to a critical point once more late in the game. You come home one night to find her wide-eyed with fear, and she shakily reveals that she knows she's being followed during the day.
Make them stop! Get their eyes off me!
Not much of a surprise considering the body count you've racked up by this point. You can reassure Heather that she's safe under your protection, but you know deep down that you can't be everywhere at once. If you decide to keep Heather at your side, she's taken hostage by Sabbat agents and murdered later on in the game. That's not great.
That one's bad.
Or you can choose to release Heather from her servitude by doing the old vampire mind wipe, and she'll think the last few evenings were just a strange dream, although she still has a weird thirst for human blood. This results in a heartbroken Heather, but at least she'll be able to try to go back to her normal life. No matter what you do here, you must come to terms with the fact that you've made a huge mess of somebody else's life, even if your intentions were initially good. Happy endings in the world of darkness are truly few and far between.
I couldn't have said it better myself, Boss Sauce, and that reminds me of another very similar dilemma that exemplifies that feeling of the road to hell always being paved with good intentions and no good deed going unpunished. Along your journey, you'll run into one awful case where a sire named Rolf has bitten a young girl named Lily. She's been held down in the basement of the blood bank so that her blood can be drained and sold. When you find her, you can release her. Hope that she'll choose the right path, start her new unlife off on the right foot somewhere else. But feverish from her need to feed, she goes berserk, killing a medical orderly on sight as soon as he enters the room. She swears she's not a monster, but she represents everything the vampires of all clans seek to avoid, giving in to the beast, which in game terms means losing all of your humanity by killing innocents. She's fallen through the cracks of the vampire system. She's been exploited, tortured, and kidnapped. Now she'll be fighting with herself every single day. The true horror of the vampire's condition is being this self-aware of what you are and knowing what you could do and having to fight against it every day. All the while, the only way to keep from doing anything any worse is the blood-sucking routine, which is monstrous in and of itself.
You might have saved me, but I can't look at you. To think anyone could be so compassionate, so heartless.
As if that wasn't bad enough, there's even a quest branch that lets you go and find a replacement blood slave from a nearby club so that this blood bank can stay in operation. But Troika doesn't stop with the messed up moral compromises there. And now I'll turn the floor over to the other head of our favorite mutant, Roland Kunz, for his favorite horror moment in the game.
The single moment that has stuck with me through all the years since I first played Bloodlines is a quiet one. There is no gore, no jump scare, not even a dramatic spike in the soundtrack. This apartment is your personal vampire haven. There's not a lot to do in here, but you are, as a player, guaranteed a safe space to collect your thoughts, enjoy some mundanity, and turn on the TV for some ambient news. While playing as a Malkavian clan member, however, turning on the TV may cause you to be pulled into this dialogue.
Hey. Heard anything?
That's it. That's the moment. Explaining why this interaction was a surprising sort of existentially spooky requires some context. First-person shooters were, up to this point in video game history, mostly level-based games that felt like the characters and environments were awaiting the player's interaction. Remember, Bloodlines released on the same day as Half-Life 2, so think of the standard of immersion for games before that. If you have that memory, I suppose.
If you're old like us.
For example, it was quite common in earlier FPSs like Doom or Quake to use a level design trick wherein enemies would literally be waiting in shut closets for the player to trigger them by crossing a threshold, opening a particular door, etc. These worlds were built for our player avatar to experience. And although there is certainly more of an attempt to immerse the player in the world of Bloodlines, it too was largely a theme park to be explored and acted upon as we desired. With this TV man dialogue, Bloodlines subtly shatters this sense of player control. Our safest space is no longer devoid of surprises. The environment can act upon us without waiting for our playful inspection. And if this previously inanimate object suddenly has its own will to impose, who's to say which others are lurking about? What if the next has a more nefarious purpose than relating to us a mildly unsettling jape, which is in itself a parable about the illusion of control?
A tuna walks into a sushi restaurant, says to the chef, "Hey, you killed my father." Chef says to the tuna, "That's my business, fish." Tuna thinks about it, says, "Then I challenge you to a game of chess. If I win, you stop being a chef forever. And if I win," asks the chef, "you can feed me to your customers." Tuna replies. So the chef and Tuna play chess. Tunas love to play chess, so in a few moves, the chef was checkmated. "Well, looks like I win," says the tuna. Chef nods and plunges his knife into the fish's belly. "But I won," says the tuna, as he feels the knife wiggling into his guts. "So did your father," says the chef.
What was previously a theme park full of safe shadows reveals itself to be carpeted floor to ceiling, toe to tip, with millions of watching unknowable eyes. Not only did this seemingly benign dialogue break the rules of this game, the haven is safe and known, it broke the rules of games up to this point. The player is in control, and simulated for the player that which is so existentially terrifying about the concept of madness. When we can no longer rely upon our own sense of reality, how can we have agency?
Along with the curse of insanity, Malkavians also get the curse of prophecy. This can manifest in some strange ways.
The Crimson Ship. He's not who he says she is, and is going to burn. Dinosaurs. He's furious. The man with the crest. The voice in the darkness. Boss. Chinese brothers.
You might know somebody's name before they introduce themselves, for example, or catch a glimpse of the world beyond the veil. So there's a possibility that in some plane of reality, TV Man is real.
Of course he's real, he's a news guy.
Good night, and have a pleasant evening.
So, there you have it, a few of our favorite creepy moments from Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. If you want to see some more, maybe check out the rest of them over on our channel.
In the meantime, thanks again to Midnight Medium for having us.
The pleasure's all mine, guys. That was great. I've never even seen the TV Man in my 2 playthroughs. So yeah, there's a lot more where that came from in their video that's going to be releasing right around the same time as this one. The link will be in the description of this video, so definitely go check those guys out. They're great, and their content is every bit as entertaining as what you just saw. So thanks again, go check those guys out. And while we have to say goodbye to our favorite two-headed mutant for now, they have helped us understand that existential horror is one of the most foundational, freaky parts of Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. Perhaps the most subtly, but most profoundly deep example of what it means to be a monstrous vampire comes in the interaction with one of your old friends from your old life. If your humanity's low enough, you'll get recognized, and what follows is just icky.
It's me, Samantha. Did you suffer amnesia? Is that it? Let me make a call.
So if you let your old friend go make a call to get you some help, you lose a masquerade point because the humans are starting to get wise that something's not right with you. But the only way that my build, or maybe just my imagination, could imagine resolving this was to feed on her while she made the call, immobilizing her and likely making her forget what she was doing, giving me time to slink away into the shadows. Not only did I feed on someone I cared for before I became this monstrous thing, but I effectively killed my old life for good. This moment's easy to overlook in the scheme of the game, but there's something weirdly meta and uncomfortable about it. It makes you sit up and take a real-life mental inventory of whether you'd feel okay with how you've been acting in this situation. It's quite the affecting moment. Okay guys, well I know that got pretty heavy there, so let's lighten things up for a bit in the world of darkness with some horrible things about the game that are actually pretty funny. Let's never forget those horrifying dance moves in the Asylum Club, like truly spine-tingling. Okay, you know what, I can't stop dancing either. I lied. Okay, you feel refreshed, enlivened, engorged. Oh, okay. Scratch that last one. That could get me demonetized. But if you're feeling good out there, then let me re-ruin that for you by delving into Bloodlines' best horror scenarios. Alright, so the first one you run into starts innocuously. I can't say that word. The first one you run into starts innocuously enough. A doctor named Stan Gimble invites you to become a model for his prosthetic limbs he's making.
You seem to have rather well-developed limbs, if you don't mind me saying so.
But as you wait for him to get ready and you start nosing around his clinic, you start to get really bad vibes. There are cages all over the place, mounted limbs on strange displays, a video camera, bloody sleeping quarters and work areas, and eventually we find one of Gimble's victims who's being held captive and chopped on day by day. Truly twisted stuff.
I'm telling you, I've been on some weird cases, but this one takes the cake.
And then Gimble catches us in the act and tries to beat us down with a limb he's chopped off someone else. But if we can withstand this dismembered onslaught, we serve justice and save the ugliest man alive.
Ha ha ha, that's funny.
This is just a taste of things to come. It's about to get so much worse, and also so much better. And by better, I mean the Haunted Ocean House Hotel, one of gaming's most popular and beloved set pieces. Now, even if someone doesn't find Bloodlines a very scary game on average, they almost always mention the Ocean House Hotel as being the one place that got to them. Now, admittedly, this is the part of the game that did not do much for me the first time around. But then again, neither did the even more hyped up Shellbridge Cradle in Thief Deadly Shadows, so maybe I just have a high tolerance for certain horror things. Well, not jump scares though. Just ask my wife, who's jump scared me probably 50 times in my life just saying hello from behind me while I'm working on videos at my computer. Troika got me good several times, and in fact, there's one Dude, did you see my mouse jerk all over the place and then me have to sit there for a minute? Well played, Troika. I hate you. Okay, so the Ocean House Hotel is haunted by the spirit of a dead girl who was murdered here, and who reaches out to you periodically with her voice, or she just slips out of sight, compelling us deeper into the house.
Help me.
Her murder is very Nightmare on Elm Street coded. There's a clue down in the boiler room as to how the girl died, and her murderer is a former groundskeeper named Ed, who wore a fedora. Definitely not to be confused with Fred, who also wore a fedora and was a groundskeeper. The house is also in disarray from a fire, just like how Freddy died when his sins were found out by the parents in the movies. But Troika adds some spice of their own. The sparse soundscape makes things very tense, but there's poltergeist activity everywhere that just makes you feel watched and helpless as light bulbs explode, furniture whizzes across the room doing real damage, as bloody words scrawl themselves on the wall and the thunder crashes outside. Then things get really weird as the house seems to fade away and give rise to these starry emissions before we're transported into the past to retrieve the dead girl's pendant and hope to lift the curse. This harrowing ordeal mostly over, you still have a choice to make that has some pretty big implications. Give the insistent Jeanette the pendant or make sure her sister Teresa gets it back. Give it to Jeanette and she throws it into the ocean out of spite, dooming the girl's spirit to stay in the house forever. Give it to Therese and you'll set her free.
What all swayed kittens do. On hands and knees you lap up the milk of me, and we purr, kitten, like dragonflies buzzing around frog bellies.
As you can see, she makes a pretty compelling case. To make matters more complicated, Jeanette will soon give us another task, which is to deface some paintings. Unfortunately, she neglects to tell us that they depict the start of the vampire curse as it relates to Cain, and it triggers a bloody apparition as vengeance for her sacrilege. Pretty freaky. Now, as it turns out, that was Teresa's art gallery, so Jeanette had us go screw up yet another one of her operations, unbeknownst to us, and she wants to make us reconcile, so we're all supposed to meet up at a nearby diner, but turns out this is an ambush, the revenge plot from Therese. Jeanette calls us to warn us that she and her sister are having a showdown, so we rush back to the asylum only to find the most whacked out twist possible. Jeanette and Therese aren't sisters, they're two aspects of the same woman's mind that is split due to the instability of her Malkavian blood and the trauma inflicted by her father. It's pretty hard to get all the prerequisites so that the sisters can reconcile here, so most players will have to side with one sister personality over the other, resulting in the death of the other. It's not a great situation, and when you see how likely this pattern happens in real life without any vampirism needed, it's hard not to be repulsed but also very sympathetic towards the mental health issues that she's having.
I didn't want her to go. I only wanted her to change. You understand, don't you?
I know we said we moved on from existential horror, but here's one of the most chilling examples of how effectively Troika stopped me in my tracks, tugged at my heartstrings with a gut-wrenching scenario. And that brings us to something that may wrench your guts for a different reason, and that is the Plague for Angels quest that sees our character trying to stop a cult spreading a disease amongst the city's homeless and trying to unmake the city in their image. Our first brush with the stanky breath of death is Brother Canker, a terrifyingly gruesome beast whose sewer lair features a hanging body bleeding off the rafters. The candle lighting and the long walk to his eventual appearance is perfect suspense and build-up. As tough as he is to put down, he's only the beginning. The next plague bearer that we track down is a babe, one Jezebel Locke, but she's just as foul as Canker. She's fully devoted to the rotting flesh plague of the Ninth Circle cult.
Oh yeah, who do we have here? Are you a believer, little morsel? Have you come for the kind of enlightenment only Jezebel can give?
Yes! Yes! Yes!
After machine gunning her out of existence, we find a flyer with a symbol that we saw back in an old abandoned building, so there we go. What we find is anything but the enlightenment that we were promised, though. This is basically Bloodlines' version of a crack house. It's run down and filled with these awful, lurching undead creatures and hapless humans caught up in this cult that act like food for you or the miserable cultists that shamble along these corridors. But to these people, this is a church, a sanctuary, all run by the man at the end of this maze that's twisted in more ways than one.
They call me Bishop Vic, Shepherd of the Damned, your midnight guide through our last days here on Earth. Gehenna, Judgment Day, the apocalypse. Oh, again, sister, you are too indoctrinated into the antiquated beliefs of this material world.
He's coughing and he can barely even articulate his foul message of spreading death wherever he can. We try to oblige him by spreading him all over the room, but we have to get through his hordes of lurching, contorted undead servants before we can bless him with buckshot. It's an action set piece, but it's a really icky and unpleasant one, with the horde of bloody, vile things clawing at you as you try and take down this pale, bloodied cult leader and cleanse the city of his evil once and for all. The zealous mania of the cult and the repulsive state that they and their victims are in is just perfect gross-out goodness, making this one of the most unpleasant and memorable quests in the whole game. But the next major moment is a bit of a switch-up, and it's absolutely one of my favorite levels, and that's the mansion of Dr. Alistair Grout. Grout is an eloquent man of medicine who operated an asylum out of his manor. His wife suffers from an incurable disease, and once he's turned into a Malkavian vampire by one of his mad patients, he devotes his life to finding other vampires suffering like he is and attempts to cure them, as well as his own wife.
My studies proceed at a languid pace. I'm mired in a foul ennui as my wife's illness advances. My subjects grow restless without proper supervision, but I cannot pull myself back from this black depression. How many nights I've wasted now, gazing from the tower walk, pondering the frailty of existence.
He's much more coherent than most Malkavians, and even sets up his house as an elaborate sequence of riddles. But he's starting to lose his grip on the voices in his head, and his paranoia starts to make him retreat from public life into his manor for good, which is where we hope to find him. Grout's a hugely sympathetic character, and it's really tough to hear about his story through these audio logs. I also love that I recognize his voice from the Doom 3 audio logs too.
This is the audio log of Medical Supervisor Peter Raleigh, dated October 29th, 2145.
What a set of pipes on this guy. But more to the point, what's so great is not only the moving story of Dr. Grout, but that the play space so deftly reflects the tone of his story, with his completely unhinged and fantastical and creepy trappings. It's not quite as Escher as the sword level in Thief the Dark Project, but it's getting there. Patients in bondage gear and gas masks mumble to themselves in the corners unless you rouse them, and then they're out for blood. The smoky-colored lighting and the tense music just make everything feel kind of off in a bondage, Alice in Wonderland kind of way. We make our way through these mad miscreants of the manor and through twisting, convoluted traps and interlocking hallways to find Dr. Grout's wife suspended in a glass case with old-timey record player music in the background. It really reminds me of Nora Freeze from those Mr. Freeze episodes in the Batman animated series. And if that weren't darkly poetic enough, in the next room, we find the good doctor. Well, the good and dead doctor. We're too late. The kind-hearted Malkavian man of medicine has been staked to the heart, and now he lies chained to his bed forevermore. This whole section is just tragic, gothic perfection. It's not bloody or full of body horror, but full of literate melancholy amidst all of its Merovingian from the Matrix Reloaded vibes. It's one of the few areas with actual puzzles, and while one or two of them don't make a whole lot of sense, it's a welcome change of pace, and it's a decidedly memorable scenario that leaves a lot more up to your imagination than the rest of the game does. Next up, we get a brief respite, from the intense set pieces, when Prince LaCroix asks us to break into the Museum of Natural History and find the sarcophagus that he thinks belongs to an ancient kindred primogen. This section plays out pretty unremarkably, it's just kind of a stealth section with a lot of hacking and sneaking around. But I must admit, the dinosaur exhibit that And I needed this moment of levity because coming up is the most messed up quest in the whole game, a near total tonal reversal from the Grout Mansion, which was about mood and angst and poetry. This next quest is like being asked to live out a Cannibal Corpse cover, so get ready. Isaac Abrams, the head vampire of Hollywood, will help us if we do him a favor. He wants to get his hands on an infamous tape for some reason. So we track down his contact to get it, but this guy seems really shaken up, saying he stashed the tape somewhere and someone's after him because of the gruesome things depicted therein. No sooner does he see something behind us and bolts than he's grabbed by something in a nearby alleyway and sucked down into the sewers. But before he goes, he leaves us a clue, so we use that to track the tape down and find, to our horror, that it features these monstrous little Nosferatu creatures pursuing a woman through a house of horrors before brutally killing her. As terrible as this is, though, it's not the complete tape. There's even more to this story. Even the sleazy owner of a skin shop who deals in some pretty messed up stuff is scared to death of what's on that tape.
I only seen one of their videos, and I swear I couldn't eat for a week.
Our search takes us further to the back of the otherwise innocuous internet cafe to find a truly debauched entertainment empire set up there. Cameras are everywhere to catch the action, but this isn't your average skin flick. There's blood spatters all over the place, and this horror show is plagued with the Nosferatu monsters from the tape. We retrieve the rest of the tape and find out exactly where it's been filmed, a house just outside of the city. And when we get there, we find the most horrific sights in the whole game. Flies buzz around frenetically. A dismembered head rests atop a headboard. The house seems to be made of bloody human skin stretched thin, with bony wing-like appendages blocking off doors and exits, and thick curtains of flesh draped on doorways. And this isn't even the worst of it. Seething in a vicious Malkavian evil in the viscera-strewn basement is the monstrous vampire known as the Tzimisce, voiced by the man who's never out of work in Steve Bloom.
I see your face is not so lifeless. Your nerves not so deadened that you cannot express shock.
Disemboweled bodies hang from the walls, and a bloody fountain rises from the middle. The only saving grace here is that you can cheese the Tzimisce by getting up on this table so you don't have to spend very long down here. Man, this whole mission gives me the willies. Snuff films are vile enough, but this house is like a Jeffrey Dahmer museum on top of it. It's honestly a lot, and it's one of the most affecting quests in the whole game that I remember so vividly despite the last time I played being 5 years ago. It's the exact opposite of subtle, and it's all the more bone-chilling and disgusting as a result, like some David Cronenberg and Clive Barker collaboration. But as absolutely messed up as so many quests have been up to this point in Bloodlines, the game unfortunately starts to shy away from these gothic and even gross-out horror storylines and turns more into a Matrix movie full of save-scumming shootouts and gang wars for the last third of its runtime. But before we talk about that, we do have a couple intermittent horror moments sprinkled throughout to enjoy. Once we get down into the notoriously drawn-out Warren section, we run into the Tzimisce creation boss, which is horrifying and would be even more so if it wasn't so easy to cheese. Not much of note happens here until we get to our destination in these Warrens, and that is the Nosferatu underground lair with tense instrumentation, whispers, and eerie vocals. I'm actually kind of surprised that this doesn't get freakier because they build it up so much so. I mean, you've even got molten blood pools that do damage, so it's not exactly like this is the most welcome place on Earth. Ultimately, the Nosferatu lair isn't all that freaky except when the leader Gary speaks to you invisibly from the shadows, or this really messed up quest where this disgraced model gets you to plant hidden cameras around her human model rival's apartment and gets you to basically capture compromising footage that embarrasses her so much she, to put it tactfully, willingly takes a trip to the other side because of it. Like, good grief, Bloodlines. What the ugh, well, let's get the taste of that out of our mouth with one of the funnier and spookier side quests. So we've got this little side quest in the Hollywood cemetery where we run into a caretaker named Romero, haha, who asks us to watch the cemetery for several minutes and make sure that none of the zombies get out. It's all played for goofs, but the zombies are actually surprisingly freaky with their groans overlaying the haunting music. And considering how hard this quest is to actually finish, you may feel the tension of all these elements pretty strongly despite its tongue-in-cheek framing. But the farther we drift from Hollyweird, the more Bloodlines trades in supernatural horror set pieces for more of a Deus Ex style city slicker RPG where we're blowing through bad guys or doing a lot of chatting. Even the bad guy gang here is known as the Tong, not to be confused with Deus Ex's Tracer Tong.
Yes, a reliable man.
So much of the game plays out like a Matrix movie after this, just shootouts in lobbies and long winding office buildings and industrial structures. And holy crap, if we want to talk horror, let's talk about the balancing on those last 2 boss fights. We do get a couple great little moments for our trouble, though, amidst all this less interesting stuff, I'll say. Hollowbrook Hotel is an incredibly tedious slog against upper-tier vampires and gunmen that just had me save scumming the whole way through as I fought the notorious controls and how easy it was to die. But it's all worth it because we get a terrifying rematch against the Samitsi.
I recognize the smell of your blood, young Cainite. Very potent. Greater than our last meeting.
Seriously, between the blood pools and the torn flesh everywhere, and the man himself emerging from the shadows like Max Shrek and Nosferatu, you got me changing my britches here, bros. I also can't overlook how scary the Griffith Park situation is after this when someone sets fire to the park and we're trapped waiting for the tram to come back for several minutes so we can escape. The catch is that you're not waiting here alone. There's a huge werewolf after you the whole time, and you have to evade him until the tram car gets back. The werewolf can even tear up the building to make its own shortcuts to get to you even easier, which is really butthole-clenchingly uncool the first time you see it happen and realize that no place is safe. Well, except this tree apparently that totally psychs out the AI and makes it run away so you can cheese him. But if you do play along with the game's idea for this set piece and just commit to running from him across the 2 floors, hoping that he won't get to you before the tram comes back, it does feel just as tense as the lodge level in Condemned 2 when the bear attacks. In fact, the wonkiness of the werewolf's AI also makes him so unpredictable that when he does show up, it's genuinely pretty surprising and scary. But beyond this moment, the rest of Bloodlines is ostensibly an action game with some thriller elements. Sure, we can fight the gargoyle in a fun little showdown in the Chinatown Theater with some great destructibility on display, or peruse the frankly impressive looking streets of Chinatown itself, but the areas like the Giovanni Mansion tend to be very loosely put together, with stealth that kind of almost just barely works or is barely possible, and dialogue options that seem to break a lot of the time or just not show up. There is a welcome foray into its catacombs, though, to fight off vicious zombies, and it's a rousing boss fight against the Tang brothers, so I guess it ends well enough. Fighting our way through a vampire hunter monastery is not the most fun thing, but it feels cool, right? How fun is it to fight off vampire hunters? But once we get to the end game, we're essentially playing the Matrix or Max Payne or the Resident Evil movies, just unloading guns, if that's your pleasure, or being required to and facing off against the atrociously balanced Ming Zhao and Sheriff boss fights, which I have no idea how I beat the first time when I played as a Tremere, because my recent Malkavian run, I just could not beat these guys. And don't get me wrong, I like action horror a lot, and I appreciate it when games just say, hey, enough messing around, let's get our hands dirty. But I do feel like the best parts of Bloodlines are what comes before this. Its slow, suspenseful, and scary parts. Its combat is so full of stilted animations, agonizingly slow recovery animations, and outrageously poor gun accuracy that even with high stats, it's not very fun or effective to fight the litany of late-game gunmen who can melt you in a heartbeat. If your heart still beat. But there's probably a reason for this shift beyond a dramatic storytelling verve. The real underrated horror of Bloodlines is that the game was essentially sent out to die, as Eurogamer put it. Troika means 3 in Russian, and 3 in the case of developer Troika Games refer to the company's legendary founders, Jason Anderson, Tim Cain, and Leonard Boyarsky of Fallout fame. These gentlemen spearheaded a small 32-person team that was working on Bloodlines and the unfinished Source engine that Valve had licensed to them while they were sprucing it up for Half-Life 2. The engine's unfinished state and Troika's inexperience with it and their perfectionist attitude ballooned the game's development time out to 3 years. Then, publisher Activision felt they'd seen enough, and they gave Troika an ultimatum. Writer Brian Mitsoda recalls that,
"We were told to wrap it up in a matter of months, at a point where we knew it was going to require a lot of crunch. It was pretty obvious at that point that we weren't considered a very important project anymore."
As good as the game was, the technical performance of it couldn't keep up with what Misoto calls its kitchen sink design. Its 9 distinct classes with tons of different abilities relating to melee, range combat, and stealth, its 4 dialogue influence methods, its 4 big hubs, and its many interconnected side areas, and its branching storyline. The game released in a broken, unfinished state with numerous game-breaking bugs and with little to no marketing. Half-Life 2 was released the same day and almost entirely and understandably hogged the spotlight.
So we knew it was buggy. We sent a disc to them to test, and we found all these bugs in it. And so we made another disc, and they're like, "Oh, we already sent that off to be gold mastered." And we're like, "Why?" They would QA 1 or 2 patches and then stop. They all said the same thing: "No, you can't put out a patch unless we approve." And so that's why there were so many fan patches, because we were literally not only ordered not to, we were threatened legally.
Troika couldn't secure further projects after this and closed their doors in 2005. Bloodlines quickly became a footnote, relegated to cult classic status, until an analytical chemist at the University of Munich named Werner Spall took it upon himself to make the unofficial patch that has become the standard for how to play this game, and is still being updated to this day. So it's probably no wonder that Bloodlines has taken a long time to catch on. It's clearly a bit rushed out and full of technical problems, and what's functional is not always that fun, or at least as much as you'd hope it could be in a perfect world. But that's the charm of Bloodlines. No matter how much it sucks, and it really sucks that much, it's still one of the most replayable and enjoyable games out there in many regards. It captures the existential horror of being a vampire while also not subverting gameplay for mere abstractions and vibes. It's still a pretty fun. I don't think so. It's still a pretty fun power fantasy when it wants to be.
It's a tough job, but somebody's got to do it.
And speaking of vibes, boy does it have them. Bloodline's soundtrack by Rick Schaefer is immaculate, full of layered, moody 2000s cool. Walking through the city streets of Los Angeles or tra-la-laing down the pier as the rain comes down are sublime mood pieces. Even when Bloodlines is sharding the bed when it comes to gameplay balance or design, it's still clearly a work of passion and artistic know-how. I'll never like its anticlimactic ending much, where all the apocalyptic import of the sarcophagus housing a world-ending ancient vampire turns out to be very much nothing that important. It's almost System Shock 2 levels of unfulfilling for me.
Nah.
But the destination isn't Bloodline's strength, or maybe even the point. It's the friends and low places that we made along the way. I still to this day remember my first playthrough as I had to drain the life from the homeless, or eat rats raw, or pounce on my friend to keep her from spilling the beans about my new lifestyle, or how many people's lives went down the drain once they got caught up in vampire politics. And who can forget tracking down the plague bearers to stop their vile contagion, or the haunting menace of the Ocean House Hotel, or the tragic story of Dr. Grout and his mind-bending mansion. I still vividly remember the mystery of the snuff film quest, dreading each step towards the answer as things got more dangerous and more hellish. Bloodlines is always better than the sum of its parts. It's full of style and clever writing and perfect atmosphere. I'd argue that one major reason that Bloodline loses some steam towards the end is because it leaves the gloom and gore behind for some straightforward and not terribly enjoyable action. It's not a crime, as Bloodlines is a great action RPG and a great vampire simulator in many regards, but it's also consistently full of great horror moments that I was sad to see them go once they start to get de-emphasized.
I didn't know about any of this stuff until a couple of months ago, when this guy just appeared and, well, all of a sudden, BAM!
And now that the troubled sequel is finally looking like it's about to release for real, and has fully leaned into the action side of things, there's probably not a huge chance that we'll get anything approaching the level of scares and horror that we did in the first game. But we'll always have the first Bloodlines, a game that's so chock full of good ideas that it's easy to overlook its rushed or bad ones. So the next time you install Bloodlines, which I'm sure you've already started doing, don't forget to pay extra attention to those blood-curdling moments, if you dare.
They never even knew what hit them. Remember, wherever we go, it is the blood of Cain which makes our fate. Farewell, vampire.
And the next time you install Bloodlines, which I'm sure you've already started doing, don't forget to be like the Two-Headed Hero and really think on those blood-curdling moments. Two-Headed Hero is a really fun channel that often focuses on the very best in RPGs and immersive sims. Absolutely give these guys a chance. Their links will be in the description. Go ahead and check them out. And if you were wondering, where have I heard that voice at the end of the video? Well, that was Jared from Avalanche Reviews. And if you haven't already, you should definitely go check him out right now, because this year has been especially hard for a lot of the bigger content creators who have seen quite a big drop-off, so he and others like him need our support now more than ever to keep doing what they're doing. So do I. So a word on that. So, if you're enjoying the channel and really want to help it get to the next level, please consider becoming a patron or a channel member. By doing so, you'll be shouted out in the credits of every video, get early access to new videos, receive game keys as available, and even be able to vote on or contribute to upcoming projects. Sounds pretty good, right? Well, these people thought so, and I have to thank them for their generous support. Starting with Mark Neubauer, Deadforge, Hey Blondie, Yak Show, Bibby F. and Bloxburg, Melancholy Geek, and Luke Dudney. Thanks for signing on. I really appreciate it. And an extra special shout out to James Wyatt and the Nth Review for contributing to my highest tiers. And if you're not tired of me by now, go ahead and check me out in the Quad Damage podcast, where I'm joined by Deadforge and Robert Yap as we talk first-person games with developers, gaming personalities, and content creators alike. God bless you, everyone, and I'll see you soon.